Hey, what's up, courageous men? This is Pastor Hal with you guys here today, and I've got Pastor Brian right here from Lando Lakes and Pastor Ricky from our central worship and all of the other stuff that you do that's creative and all those things. I'm not sure exactly what Pastor Ricky does, but everything looks great. It looks great. But we are here today just continuing to talk about the attributes of God and just that understanding of what we understand about God changes the way we go to God, the amount of faith we have in God, and whether or not we trust Him. And really today, that's the idea, is that it's a trust thing. And the idea of, can I believe that God can bring calm to my chaos? Do I believe that God can bring peace in the middle of a storm? And one of the best stories from the Bible that really talks about that is one where Jesus did exactly that, brought calm to the storm. Jesus and his disciples, they are out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, and all of a sudden a storm comes up. And in Matthew 8, 23 to 27, we see it. It says, "Then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so the waves swept over the boat." It says, but Jesus was sleeping. We actually see later on, Jesus is on a pillow in the back of the boat. He's totally calm. Disciples are freaking out. It says, disciples went and woke him, saying, "Lord, save us, we're going to drown." He replied, "You have little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." What I love in this moment, even the disciples are a little bit stunned by what just happened. It's funny, they wake him up and say, "Hey, we're going to drown," but then they're stunned by what he does in the moment. But I think what we can get from this is this idea is that Jesus is the peace in the middle of the storm. Right. Peace is a person. And there's all kinds of storms that we face in life. There's all kinds of things that we walk through, and some of them just have to do with uncertainty and doubt.
For sure. For sure, definitely. Obviously, when you think of this story specifically, which is one of my favorite stories in the Bible, you have to consider the uncertainty that they walked in with. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys get hit in a storm, in the middle of a lake, in a boat. Now, they were fishermen. A lot of them were fishermen, and so this wasn't abnormal. But for whatever reason, it specifies that this was a really, really bad one, that they were not prepared for at all. And so, and it goes on to tell how afraid they were. They were even fearing for their life. They didn't know that they were going to make it out alive of this. And in that moment, they look around going, "Hey, where's Jesus?" And which I think is hysterical, because when they find Jesus, he's not only tucked away, he's asleep. Mm-hmm. And I like the book of Mark says, it mentions the pillow, like you said, he was asleep on, which I love that version, because they're freaking out. They go onto this boat to get to the other side, and they don't see, Jesus is walking onto this boat with a Snuggie and a travel pillow, and he is intending to sleep on this boat, right? Fishing boats don't have pillows on them. Jesus was prepared to sleep on this boat. And while everybody else was in turmoil and crisis, fearing for their lives, Jesus' intention the whole time was to be at peace. Like he's going to crash, he's going to take a nap. He's sawing logs in there, and when they're freaking out in the worst moment, they forgot who was in the boat with them. The hard truth is this: we have very little control in this life, right? Especially of our circumstances and of the storms that come our way. Yeah. We just don't have control. And it's the one thing that we want more than anything. And then when those storm comes, we forget who is in the boat with us. And the fact that the certainty that Jesus had, the confidence that he had, intending to rest on this, during the storm on this trip is incredible, right? And in the midst of our crisis, I think it just begs for us to focus on this passage and know that he's in the boat, man. He's never not been in the boat with us through any storm.
Yeah, it's the control aspect.
Right.
Because uncertainty and doubt, the reason we have uncertainty and doubt is because we're not in control.
That's right.
And so it's the idea of understanding God sees everything, I don't.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that.
Exactly.
Which is not the good part, because the storms are there because of uncertainty and doubt. I do think, though, some of the toughest storms that we walk through is really when we lose someone or there's loss or grief in our life.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that. I mean, I think I've gone through the storms of grief and loss one too many times in my life. And, I actually came across this quote that says, "Grief arrives like a storm without warning." One moment you're standing in sunlight, and the next you're soaked in sorrow you never saw coming. And I've seen that in my life. I've seen where I felt I've been soaking in sunlight, and then from one moment to the other, soaking in sorrow. Or there are times that you see it coming. And no matter what, it's like a storm. You can tell the shift in the atmosphere. You can almost tell that just by the humidity that the storm is coming. So there's been times in my life that I've seen it coming, but regardless of you even having an awareness it's coming, nothing prepares you for the weight that comes with grief.
That's right.
Yeah.
Nothing can prepare you for the weight that comes with loss. And I think about listening to you, you even talk about how Jesus was chilling in the storm. And I think that's when we talk about peace in the middle of the storm. Sometimes peace is God brings peace and he calms the waves, or sometimes the waves are still going and he calms you.
Yeah.
Like he brings peace to you
right.
while the waves are going crazy. And I think, that's an important reminder for me, going through many seasons, quite few, of grief and loss. Philippians 4 says the following, 4-7 says, rejoice in the Lord always, not seldom, but always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious, which is not easy at all. No. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests unto God. And the best part of the verse is, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And that word transcends means so much to me, because what it has meant to me in my life and my journey, and probably you can relate to as well. It says, God, regardless of how big the waves are, I'm gonna trust and have this peace that just doesn't make sense. I mean, I've been in situations where people are looking at me, and the enemy has not had the ability to rob my song, the tune of my life. He wasn't able to take it from me, because there was a peace that transcended all understanding in that moment, that I was still able to sing, that I was still able to have gratitude. I should not be singing. I should not have gratitude. But there's a peace that just transcends my circumstance. And so that for me has been something. I think you see David, the reason why he's able to face his giant, the reason why he's able to not only have peace but strength to face his giant, is because he also goes back and looks and finds what God what did in the past, right? Yeah. In 1 Samuel 17, he says the following. He says, the Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me again. Yeah. And so if you're looking at this in your life and you're saying the storm of grief and loss, I just want to tell you one thing that's helped me is look back. Mm-hmm. Look back at if I want to be able to have peace for now, look back where I found peace prior, where God moved, where God answered. Yeah. There's a song that we sing that says, "Do it again." Mm-hmm. A song that we'll see it again. I've seen you move. I've seen you move the mountains. I'll see you do it again. So for me, I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but the storms of grief and loss will come. Yeah, they'll come. God will guaranteed. It's guaranteed. There's no doubt. But our ability to be able to look back and be reminded of what he has done, and he's able to do it still today, will give us strength to have that peace that surpasses the circumstance that is around us. That's what's helped me.
That's good.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. What we do in our life right now, as far as whether or not we know Jesus or not, actually allows the people around us to have faith in the middle of the storm when we pass away. Right. That's right. Because we're all pastors here. We've done funerals. We've been around these things. It's a very different feeling in a funeral when someone knows God.
Absolutely.
When they know God, when they've lived that kind of life, and then you can go, guys, here's what we know. Because God's in control, the worst moment of life is actually the best moment later on, is where maybe I'm not spending my eternity here anymore, but I get to spend my eternity with God. And so all the things that were the worst part of this life, now God's replaced them with the best part of being next to him. Yeah. Grief and loss are a very tough moment. And I think for many of us, it becomes one of those moments of where we decide whether or not we're going to continue to follow God or not. Sure. In the middle of grief and loss is tough, but I'll tell you that some of the toughest moments of storms are in our own households.
Oh my gosh.
With the people we love the most, right?
For sure. Yeah, right. Because it's when those storms hit, right, that our faith gets challenged the most. And our faith gets challenged the most around the people that know us the best, right? Because that's where we have to live it out. Mm-hmm. We don't get to fake it at home. Like, they know us for who we really are, right? With our stretchy pants and our sandals. However you do at home, right? When you get home after work and whatever you change into, the real you, your family knows them, and you can't fake it. So when storms hit, it reveals who we really are. It reveals what we really trust, right? And that storms just regularly lead to conflict a lot in our lives. And everybody knows the one of the leading causes of divorce is financial crisis, right? Or miscommunication, or just conflict in communication. So that the conflict comes. Hard times are guaranteed, like you just said a few minutes ago. That's going to happen. And in those moments when the real you comes out and it causes conflict, whether it's at home with your spouse, over money, or at work with a coworker over a job or career? What about those moments when something unfair is done, when somebody says something that's just not fair? Maybe they're digging up past or old wounds, right? And it's in those moments of conflict that we like to dig up all of that garbage and open the trunk and just remember that, and it just compounds. But I think it all goes back to the same thing. We forget when the storms come and it causes conflict, it's because we've lost perspective of who is in the boat with us. Because when our eyes are fixed and focused on Jesus, the fact that he is calm in the storm. He is peace in the storm. And he is the one that we're trusting in. All of a sudden, you get on the same page with your spouse or with your other relationships or whatever the case is, then you have a common denominator. And listen, we're going to trust Jesus in this moment because he is our calm. He is our peace. And there is a peace that can only be known in that storm, that you will never experience any other way, short of going through and walking through that storm. But he is the peace in the conflict as well.
Yeah. And I think it's this too. I think we find out very quick who our God is. Absolutely. Or who we made our God in the middle of that.
Oh, man.
Because, guys, we can make our spouse our God.
That's right.
We can make our kids our God. We can make our job our God. And the problem is, especially when it comes to at home life, when all of a sudden our God is arguing with us,
right,
or doesn't like us,
or we're arguing about God or money,
right? It falls apart so much quicker.
Yeah.
The storm is always going to be bigger when our God is anything but God.
That's good.
And so I think that's the biggest thing. When we look at our lives, when we look at our home life, who is the center?
That's it.
Who is the biggest part? Who's in the boat with you? Because if God's not there, all of a sudden when your God is messing up or your God doesn't see you in the same way as before, it makes it even worse.
Absolutely.
And so, we have storms in all these areas. I think the hardest thing, and it's something that we're dealing with nowadays, is where the storm just kind of comes out of nowhere. And sometimes it's a mixture of so many different things, but it comes down to that mental health, that anxiety, that fear. And I think a lot of men would say this, I've never felt it my entire life, then all of a sudden I feel it in this moment. So how do we deal with the storms of anxiety and fear?
Yeah, I went back to Philippians 4 and the part where it says, don't be anxious, but present your request to God. And I was thinking about this because I realized that the moments of anxiety or anxiousness that I have felt have been less about the circumstances or the giants around me. It's been more about the things I'm not willing to let go of.
Yeah.
I've come to understand that the anxiety I feel is not. I'm holding on to more things than the size of the giants that are actually in front of me. Yeah. And so I realize that the narratives that I'm creating or the stories that I'm creating are greater than the giants that are actually in front of me.
That's good.
I came across this stat that says over 90% of an average person's anxiety is focused on things that'll never actually happen.
Yeah,
it's true.
This French philosopher said this: my life has been filled with terrible misfortune, most of which never happened. And this has definitely been my narrative. I've realized this, and I've learned in my life that I've embraced this statement: fear paralyzes, but faith can mobilize us. Yeah. And I have allowed many times before for fear to definitely be something that has paralyzed me. Fear paralyzes our hearts, our actions, our souls. I wrote it this way: fear paralyzes the heart, our minds. It changes us to what ifs and doubts. Yeah. To what ifs and doubts. But faith can mobilize the soul, pushing us forward when reason tells us not to do anything else. And this has been my narrative. This has definitely been my narrative, where I have been, instead of being mobilized by faith, I've been paralyzed by my fear and lived in the what ifs. Man, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And I've seen that God has equipped me for so much things, and I haven't stepped forward, literally paralyzed by what if. And I love the fact that we go back again. Just like we talked about earlier, going back to what God did for David, we go back to his word, to his promises. 2 Timothy 1:7 says the following: for the Spirit of God has for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline. Isaiah 41:10 says, don't fear, because I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand. When it doesn't make sense, when there's no reason at all, his word and his promises remind us that we have something to fall back on. We have something. He's already done it. He'll do it again. And this has been my narrative. This is where my anxiety and my anxiousness, in the last 5 years, some of the mountains that I face, I have literally seen God move my what if to even if. My what if to even if. And I've seen not only a peace, but I've seen a contentment come into my life that God, whatever answer you bring, because often we ask God to do something in our life, but we give him the blueprint.
Yeah.
I'm going to give this, but I want you to do it exactly this way.
Yeah.
What he's done in my life is that I've stopped giving him a blueprint. So living in the even if, man, there's a contentment of however it plays out. I will praise you and I will trust you, even if. And it's been such my last statement on this is, it wrote it this way: God's power transforms our what if fears into even if courage.
Yeah.
That's good.
Empowering us to step forward into and things that we never imagined we can do.
Well, the even if is because we understand the truth of God.
Absolutely.
I've said this in a message before. We can't stop fear and anxiety from knocking at the door, but we can decide whether or not they have a seat at the table.
Absolutely. I love
So
that.
do I replace that with the truth of God, or do I allow it to fill my life? And so it all comes down to the same thing. We're talking about anxiety and fear and chaos and storms. All of us have a storm. Men, all of us have a storm. Sometimes it's in our family, sometimes it's in our job, sometimes it's in our own mind. But here's the question: who's going to be in the middle of the storm with you? Are you going to allow God to sit with you in the storm? Are you going to allow Jesus into your boat? Or are you going to try to do it by yourself? Look, God says this. He promises us peace, a peace that doesn't make sense, a peace that the world doesn't get, that doesn't understand, but it's only when we get next to him. So, men, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sit around. We're going to have some conversations. We're going to be honest about the storms that we have in our life, and we're going to be honest about the next steps that we need to take to put Jesus in the middle of that storm. Let's have some great conversation.